I was sipping my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed against the glass desk. The screen lit up with my brother's name, Ethan. I hadn't spoken to him in months, maybe longer, but somehow my chest still tightened at the sight of it. The morning sun filtered through the wide windows of my office, catching the edges of the framed city skyline behind me. From the outside, I looked every bit the woman who had made it, silk blouse pressed, hair smooth, gold pen poised over neat paperwork. But the truth? There were scars beneath that polish, scars no one here knew about. I hesitated before answering, tracing my finger along the rim of my coffee mug. His voice, when it came through, was strained, urgent. He said a few words that brought me right back to a memory I had worked so hard to bury. The bank called again. They said your name's still tied to the loan. My grip on the mug faltered. My name. My savings. My life's work at 23, swept away in one reckless signature I never even gave. The air in the room felt thinner, sharper. I could almost hear the echo of my parents' voices from years ago, calm, casual, as if they hadn't just gutted me. We used your savings to help your brother. He needed it. You'll understand one day. Only I didn't understand. Not then. Not now. And as Ethan kept talking, my eyes drifted to the skyline, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. He had no idea who I had become since that betrayal. No idea what it had cost me to rise from the ashes they left behind. I was 23 the day everything unraveled. I still remember the sticky summer heat in Ohio, how the box fan rattled in the corner of my childhood bedroom as I sat counting the numbers in my worn notebook. Every dollar I had scraped together from part-time jobs, scholarships, tutoring gigs, it was all there. My savings. My plan. My safety net. College had been a battlefield, but I had emerged with a degree and a small nest egg. It wasn't much by anyone else's standards, just over $35,000, but to me, it was freedom. My ticket out. That morning, though, my mother's voice called from downstairs. Sweet at first, almost sing-song, until I walked into the kitchen and noticed the silence. My father sat at the table, eyes averted. My brother Ethan leaned against the counter, avoiding me altogether. "We need to talk," my mother began, twisting a dish towel in her hands. Her words tumbled out, too casual for the weight they carried. "We used your savings. Ethan needed help with his loan. You'll understand someday." At first, I laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. Then I saw the papers on the table, bank statements with my name, my account number. The pit in my stomach hollowed into rage. "You did what?" My voice cracked. My hands trembled as I snatched the papers, the edges cutting into my fingers. It was sitting there, my father muttered, as if that made it acceptable. "Family helps family." Family. The word stung worse than the betrayal itself. Family had always meant sacrifice, but apparently only mine. I remember gripping the silver pendant around my neck, a gift from my grandmother before she passed. She had pressed it into my palm when I was 16, whispering, "Don't let anyone silence your worth, sweetheart. You fight for it." That pendant burned against my skin as I stood in that kitchen, my parents' calm explanations clashing with Ethan's guilty silence. They had stolen not just money, but my trust, my belief that I mattered as much as he did. By the end of that night, after shouting until my throat ached and crying until my eyes swelled, I packed a single suitcase. I left behind the house, the fan, the broken promises. With the pendant still at my throat, I stepped into the humid night air and whispered to myself, "Never again." That was the moment I chose independence, even if it meant starting from nothing. Starting over at 23 felt like standing barefoot on broken glass, painful, uncertain, but strangely exhilarating. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Cleveland with peeling paint and a window that stuck halfway shut. The bed was a thrift store mattress on the floor, the kitchen barely big enough for a coffee pot. But it was mine. Every bill I paid, every meal I cooked, every late-night tear I wiped away, I did that. Alone. I worked 3 jobs at first, waiting tables, tutoring high school kids in math, and answering phones at a real estate office. The days blurred into each other, exhaustion carving shadows beneath my eyes. But whenever I felt like giving up, I'd touch the silver pendant at my neck and hear my grandmother's voice. You fight for it. One evening, at the real estate office, I stayed late filing papers when the owner's sister, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret, stopped by. She noticed how quickly I was typing, how carefully I organized contracts. You're wasted at the front desk, she told me. Come sit with me tomorrow. I'll show you how the real deals are made. That moment changed everything. Margaret became the mentor I never expected but desperately needed. She didn't coddle me, she challenged me. When I doubted myself, she reminded me that intelligence wasn't arrogance, and ambition wasn't shameful. She pushed me into rooms full of men who barely glanced my way, forcing me to speak up, to defend my numbers, to trust my gut. The climb wasn't glamorous. There were nights I cried over rejection emails, mornings when I went to work on 2 hours of sleep, afternoons when clients dismissed me because of my age or my gender. But slowly, small victories piled up. My first solo closing, the first time a client requested me by name, the first commission check big enough to pay off my student loans. With every win, I tucked the news away like a secret treasure. On social media, I stayed modest, sharing only safe, neutral updates, never revealing how much I was building. I knew if my family saw the truth too soon, they'd try to claim it, explain it away, or worse, tear it down. Instead, I built quietly, steadily. I reinvested commissions into new opportunities, learned everything I could about property management, and eventually launched a small firm of my own. The name on the door was simple, Harper and Company, but seeing it etched in glass for the first time nearly brought me to my knees. Behind the polished logo and carefully staged office was a woman still carrying the memory of betrayal, still haunted by the image of her parents calmly explaining away her stolen future. But now I was forging a new one. The pendant remained at my neck, a constant reminder. Whenever doubt whispered in my ear, I touched it and remembered that night I walked away with nothing but a suitcase and sheer determination. And though I never said it aloud, I made a promise to myself. One day, when my family saw what I had built, they wouldn't recognize me. They wouldn't see the girl they underestimated. They'd see the woman who rose despite them. The day my family finally walked into my world was a Tuesday, sharp and ordinary, until it wasn't. I had agreed, reluctantly, to meet them after Ethan's latest round of calls. He said they wanted to talk things through. A part of me almost laughed. Years of silence, of them pretending nothing had happened, and now they wanted to talk. Still, I agreed. Not because I owed them anything, but because a part of me wanted them to see. To know. When they arrived, I didn't meet them at a coffee shop or in some cramped living room. I invited them to my office. My territory. The elevator opened onto the 22nd floor of Harper and Company, where the marble floors gleamed and the walls displayed framed photographs of properties we had transformed. My assistant, Emily, offered them sparkling water, her professional smile never faltering even as my mother glanced nervously around, clearly out of place. They followed Emily into the conference room, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a painting. My father paused, staring at the leather chairs, the polished oak table, the abstract art piece on the far wall. Ethan muttered, "Wow," under his breath. I entered last, my heels clicking softly against the floor, silk blouse tucked neatly, hair pulled back in a way that made me feel untouchable. I didn't rush. I let the silence do its work. "Thank you for coming," I said finally, sliding into the chair at the head of the table. My mother blinked at me. This is your office?" "It is," I said smoothly. "Harper and Company. Real estate. I own it." The words hung in the air, almost tangible. I could see the disbelief ripple across their faces. My father cleared his throat, as if trying to rationalize what he was seeing. Ethan just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't decide which question to ask first. "I thought you were struggling," my mother said softly. "I was," I admitted. "For a while. But I built this. Without your help. Without anyone's help." The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match we'd ever had. I let them absorb it. The photographs of properties worth millions, The awards lined neatly on the shelves, the quiet hum of success that surrounded us like a second skin. Finally, my father spoke, his voice rough. "So, you're doing well." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "That's one way to put it." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. "You never told us." "Why would I?" I asked. "When I was 23, you all decided my dreams, my savings, my life didn't matter. You handed it over without a word. Do you know what that did to me? Do you even care?" My mother's lips parted, but no words came. My father stared at the table. Ethan looked stricken, as though he was only now realizing the weight of what had been done. I rose from my chair and walked slowly around the room, letting my hand skim the back of each leather chair. "You thought I would crumble. Maybe you even wanted me to. But I didn't. I built something greater than any of you ever imagined." I stopped at the window, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. My reflection stared back at me, strong and unflinching. Turning back to them, I said the words I'd waited years to say. "You didn't just take my money. You forged the fire that made me who I am today. And now," I gestured around the room, "to the empire they couldn't deny. This is who I am." Their stunned silence was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. The silence stretched until Ethan finally broke it. "Harper," he said, using my first name as though we were strangers. "The bank's still calling. I need help." His voice was fragile, threaded with shame. My parents glanced at him, then back at me, clearly hoping I would swoop in and clean up the mess, the way they once expected me to. But I didn't move. I stayed standing by the window, arms crossed loosely, the city lights beginning to flicker on below us. "You need help," I repeated, my voice calm, even. "Funny. That's what I needed when you all emptied my account." "Harper, we didn't mean," my mother started. I held up a hand. Don't rewrite the story. You knew exactly what you were doing. And here's the thing. You've had years to apologize. You never did. You only came when you needed something again." The weight of the words settled over the room. For once, my father didn't argue. He just sat there, shoulders hunched, eyes tired. I walked back to the head of the table and leaned forward, palms flat on the polished wood. "If you want my help, it comes with conditions. Non-negotiable." Ethan swallowed hard. "What kind of conditions?" I looked directly at him. "First, you take responsibility. You meet with a financial advisor every week until that debt is gone. No more handouts, no more excuses. If I step in, it's as a guarantor of accountability, not a blank check." His face tightened, but he nodded. Then I turned to my parents. "As for you, I don't need your apologies anymore. But if you want to be in my life, you'll respect my boundaries. No more comparisons, no more favoritism. You will treat me as the woman I am, not the daughter you underestimated." My mother's eyes glistened, her chin trembling. My father gave a slow, reluctant nod. "And one more thing," I added, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the air. "You'll start building your own lives outside of Ethan. He isn't your only child. He isn't your legacy. If you can't see that, then you don't get to see me at all." The words hung there, final and steady. For the first time, I saw something shift in their expressions, not just guilt, but understanding. The realization that I wasn't that trembling 23-year-old girl anymore. I was the woman in charge now. I sat back down, crossing one leg over the other. "Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Either way, I'll be fine." Ethan rubbed his hands over his face, exhaling shakily. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll take the advisor. I'll fix this." My mother whispered, "We'll try," her voice breaking on the word try. I nodded, a calm certainty anchoring me. "Good. Then maybe, just maybe, we have a chance to rebuild. But it will be on my terms, not the ones you chose years ago." For the first time in my life, they were the ones seeking permission. And I was the one deciding if they deserved it. The weeks that followed felt surreal. For once, my phone didn't just ring when there was a crisis. It rang with updates. Ethan called after his first meeting with a financial advisor, his voice steadier than I'd heard in years. He admitted it was hard, facing the numbers, owning the mistakes, but he was doing it. My parents, too, began to shift in small but visible ways. My mother sent a handwritten note, apologizing not just for the money, but for years of dismissal. My father, the man who once thought silence was strength, asked if he could visit my office again, not to ask for anything, but to understand what I had built. I didn't forgive overnight. Scars don't vanish because someone finally sees them. But I allowed space for them to change, for me to breathe without resentment suffocating me. One evening, alone in my apartment, I pulled the pendant from beneath my blouse. Its surface was worn now, the chain slightly tarnished, but it still glimmered in the low light. I remembered my grandmother's voice, the way her hand had closed over mine. Don't let anyone silence your worth. You fight for it. And I realized I had. Through betrayal, through exhaustion, through loneliness. I had fought for it and I had won. The skyline outside my window was dazzling, lights blinking like stars against the velvet night. Once, I'd looked at this city as something bigger than me, something I had to conquer. Now, I felt it pulsing with my own heartbeat, as if it finally belonged to me. Family was complicated. Love, betrayal, hope, they wove together into a tapestry I hadn't asked for, but one I could finally hold without flinching. I knew we might never be the family I once dreamed of, but we were no longer trapped in the cycle of silence and debt, of taking and resenting. I had set the terms. They had chosen to meet them. And for the first time, I felt not just powerful, but free. I slipped the pendant back against my skin, whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who had believed in me before anyone else, and let a small smile curve my lips. My worth, I murmured, is mine to protect.